The sun was beginning to set over the small town of Maplewood, casting a warm golden hue across the rows of modest houses. Inside one of them, laughter echoed from the kitchen, the kind of laughter that made a house feel like home. Caleb Dawson and his best friend Noah Bennett were finishing the last bites of dinner, still chuckling at an inside joke only they understood. Noah had always loved being at Caleb's house. It wasn't the food, though Rachel Dawson cooked like a dream, or the cozy living room with its soft, oversized couch. It was the way it felt. Safe, stable, loving. Something his own home hadn't been in a long time. It had been 6 months since Noah's mother passed away. Cancer, a slow, cruel goodbye. Since then, he'd been living with his Uncle Craig, a man who saw parenting as a chore, not a responsibility. The apartment was cold in every sense of the word. Meals were frozen or forgotten. Conversations were rare and sharp, and no one ever asked how Noah was doing. Not really. That night after dinner, the boys went upstairs to Caleb's room. Posters of indie bands lined the walls, and a faint smell of cologne and old pizza filled the air. They sat on the floor playing video games, but Noah's mind was far from the screen. His fingers moved without thinking. His heart was somewhere else. Caleb noticed it first. "You okay, man?" he asked gently, pausing the game. Noah stared at the controller in his hands, then looked up. His eyes, always a soft hazel, were glassy now. He hesitated before speaking. "Do you think your parents would ever... I don't know. Let me stay here for real?" Caleb blinked, unsure what Noah meant at first. Then it hit him. "Like, move in?" he asked carefully. Noah nodded slowly. "Yeah. I mean, not just stay. I mean, what if they adopted me?" The room went quiet. Downstairs, Rachel was loading dishes into the washer when she heard footsteps. Noah stood awkwardly at the edge of the kitchen, his hands shoved deep in his hoodie pockets. "Hey, sweetheart," she smiled. "Everything okay?" He opened his mouth and then closed it again. His voice came out barely above a whisper. "I want to ask you something, and I know it's a lot, and I'm probably way out of line, but I don't know who else to ask." Rachel set the dish towel down and turned to face him, her expression softening. "Of course, what is it, Noah?" He swallowed hard. "Would you ever consider adopting me?" Silence filled the space between them. Not awkward, not cold, but deep, heavy, full of weight. Rachel's eyes widened just slightly, not from shock, but from the magnitude of the moment. Her hands instinctively moved toward him, resting gently on his shoulders. She saw the pain in his eyes, the plea, the fragile hope. She didn't speak right away, because this wasn't a question that deserved a quick answer, but in her heart something stirred, something maternal, fierce, and undeniable, and so began a story that would test love, challenge legality, and open millions of hearts to what family really means. Rachel Dawson didn't sleep that night. After Noah asked his question, "Would you ever consider adopting me?" Time seemed to slow. She hadn't said yes. She hadn't said no. She had simply pulled him into a long, silent hug, resting her hand on the back of his head as he tried not to cry into her shoulder. And then gently she told him, "We'll talk. As a family, I promise." Upstairs, Caleb had been pacing ever since Noah went down to the kitchen. When his friend finally returned, there was no need to explain. Caleb could read the answer in Noah's red eyes and the way he exhaled. Not broken, but lighter. In the morning, Rachel sat at the kitchen table with her husband, David Dawson, steaming mugs of coffee between them. The house was quiet. Caleb was still asleep. Noah had left early for school, barely touching his toast. Rachel looked at David with a gravity that didn't need explanation. "He asked us to adopt him." David leaned back in his chair, hands folded together tightly. He wasn't surprised. He had seen it coming. The way Noah lingered after dinner. The way he smiled wider here than anywhere else. The way he winced slightly when someone mentioned home. "He's 15, David said softly. "It's not just a legal thing. It's emotional, complex." Rachel nodded. "I know, but it's not about what's easy, it's about what's right." They sat in silence, the kind that comes when two people are facing a decision that could change lives. Rachel reached for David's hand. Can you imagine what it took for him to ask that? The courage, the desperation. David looked at her, eyes glistening slightly. "I can," he said, "because I remember what it felt like to be a scared kid who just needed someone to say, 'You belong here.'" At school, Noah kept his head down. The fear had started to creep in. Was it too much? Did I ruin everything? He barely touched his lunch. Caleb noticed. He sat beside him in the cafeteria, chewing on a sandwich without speaking. Then, finally, "My parents talked this morning," Caleb said quietly. "They're not mad at all, they're just thinking. Seriously." Noah blinked, unsure if he heard it right. "Seriously?" Caleb nodded. "My dad said something about calling a lawyer, just to understand what it would take." And just like that, something inside Noah cracked, not from sadness but from the possibility of hope. Real, terrifying, beautiful hope. That night, Rachel knocked softly on Noah's door. He was borrowing the guest room again. He'd been sleeping over more and more, though no one had said anything. She sat on the edge of the bed, her voice calm and kind. "We want you to know something," she said. "No matter what happens, this house is always your home. But we are going to explore this, all of it. Not because we feel sorry for you, not out of obligation, but because we already love you like our own." Noah's lips trembled, his hands tight around the blanket. "Are you sure?" he whispered. "I come with a lot." Rachel smiled through her tears. "So do all the best kids." That night, as the Dawson household fell into a quiet hush, something shifted. Not just a conversation, but a commitment. A door that had been cracked open was now fully ajar. And on the other side was a future no one had planned for, but everyone had already begun to love. The following week began with paperwork, the kind that felt cold and sterile, a sharp contrast to the warmth that filled the Dawson home. David sat at the dining room table, reading through adoption resources and state regulations, highlighter in hand. Rachel paced behind him, her phone pressed to her ear as she tried to reach a local family lawyer who specialized in guardianship and foster care. Noah didn't ask for updates. He knew this part wasn't like asking for a sleepover. This wasn't just about being wanted. It was about being allowed. At school, the weight of the uncertainty followed him like a shadow. When the teacher called his name for attendance, he hesitated before saying, "Here," wondering how long he'd have to keep saying it in classrooms that felt temporary. In the hallways, he smiled at Caleb's jokes but laughed just a little too late, a little too hollow. One afternoon, as they walked home, Noah broke the silence. "What if it doesn't work? What if the courts say no? Or my uncle fights it?" Caleb stopped walking. "My parents don't start things they don't finish. If they said they're doing this, they're doing it." Noah wanted to believe that. But the fear wasn't legal, it was emotional. He'd learned the hard way that people sometimes leave, even when they love you. That evening, the Dawsons had their first meeting with the attorney, a woman named Marlene West. She was kind, efficient, and spoke with the empathy of someone who had seen more broken families than most people ever would. "Technically, Noah's uncle still has legal custody," she explained. "He's not Noah's legal guardian in the emotional sense, but on paper he is." "So what does that mean?" David asked. "It means," Marlene continued, "you'll need his consent, or you'll need to prove he's unfit." Rachel clenched her jaw. "He doesn't hit him, but he ignores him. He treats him like he doesn't exist." Marlene nodded slowly. "Unfortunately, emotional neglect is harder to prove. But it's not impossible." She looked at them both. "You need to prepare Noah. This process may dig up pain he's buried. If you want to do this, you have to be ready to carry that with him." Rachel didn't hesitate. "We already are." Meanwhile, Noah sat in Caleb's room, scrolling through his phone, pretending not to care. Pretending not to imagine all the ways this could go wrong. "What if he says no?" he finally asked. "Your dad, your mom. What if they change their mind once they see how complicated I am?" Caleb looked at him, dead serious. "Then they wouldn't be my parents. But they are. And they don't run from complicated." Later, that night, Rachel knocked on Noah's door again. She carried a folded blanket and a piece of paper. "I found this in the guest room closet," she said, placing the blanket at the foot of the bed. It was Caleb's baby blanket. "I saved it for when he got older. for when he might want to give it to his own kid someday. She paused, then handed Noah the paper. It was a copy of a temporary guardianship form, already signed by her and David. It wasn't legal yet, but it was a start. "I want you to know," she said softly, "you don't have to earn your place here. You already have it." Noah didn't cry. He couldn't. The wall inside him had been up for too long. But as he unfolded the blanket and ran his fingers over its faded fabric, something cracked quietly inside him. It wasn't safety. Not yet. But it was the closest he'd ever felt. The day Rachel drove Noah back to his uncle's apartment was grey, overcast skies and a chilly wind that made everything feel heavier. It wasn't court-ordered, not yet. But Marlene, a voice of both caution and care, had suggested that someone needed to speak with Craig Bennett before any legal filings began. "If he finds out through paperwork," Marlene had said, "he may. Fight harder. If you speak to him first, it might give you a better chance or at least a clearer picture." Noah hadn't been back in over a week. In that time, the warmth of the Dawsons' home had started to chip away at the numbness that had become his normal. But as Rachel's car pulled up in front of the faded brick building, that numbness came flooding back like muscle memory. The apartment door was half open. A TV blared from inside. Rachel looked at Noah. "Are you sure you're okay going in?" "Alone?" He nodded, but his hand trembled as it reached for the doorknob. Craig barely looked up from the couch when Noah stepped in. "Back for your stuff," he muttered, eyes glued to a sports broadcast. Noah hesitated. The room smelled like stale beer and microwave burritos. His old mattress was still on the floor of the guest room, unmade, a pile of laundry in one corner that hadn't moved since he left. Noah said, "But also to talk." That got Craig's attention, not curiosity, just mild irritation. Noah took a breath. "I want to live with the Dawsons, Rachel and David. They want to adopt me." Silence. Craig blinked, then scoffed. "What? You think I don't take care of you good enough?" Noah's voice cracked. "You don't really take care of me at all." Craig stood up, looming over him, not violent but sharp, like someone who'd never learned to show care without anger. "I gave you a roof, didn't I? Food when I could. You're not bleeding. You're not in foster care. You should be grateful." Noah looked at the floor. "I'm not asking to hurt you. I'm asking to be okay." For a long time, Craig didn't say a word. Then he lit a cigarette, sat back down, and waved a dismissive hand. "Do what you want. I didn't sign up for this anyway. But don't expect me to lie to some judge and say I abandoned you. I didn't. I just couldn't do more." Noah nodded. It wasn't acceptance, but it wasn't a war either. Back in the car, Rachel glanced at him. "How did it go?" He didn't look at her, just stared out the window. He said he didn't sign up for this. Rachel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "You didn't sign up for this either, sweetheart, but you're still here. That matters more." That evening, when Noah returned to the Dawson house, something small but powerful changed. He didn't go to the guest room. He walked straight into Caleb's room, dropped his bag on the floor, and sat on the bed like it was his. Caleb raised an eyebrow. "You good?" Noah didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "Yes, I mean not yes, but not no." Caleb smiled. "So that's a win." Noah didn't smile back, not yet, but for the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to believe in the possibility of a future that wasn't broken before it began, and, just maybe, a past that didn't have to define it. The courthouse in Maple County wasn't grand. No marble columns, no sweeping staircases, just beige walls, flickering fluorescent lights, and the sound of heels echoing down linoleum floors. But to Noah it felt massive, intimidating, like walking into a place where people decided if you were wanted or not. In writing. Rachel sat beside him in the waiting area, her hand gently wrapped around his. On her lap sat a neatly organized folder, legal documents, school records, medical forms, all of it laid out to prove what her heart already knew, that Noah belonged with them. David stood nearby, talking with Marlene West, their lawyer, calm, serious, steady. But every so often he glanced at Noah and gave a reassuring nod, like a lighthouse cutting through fog. Noah tugged at the sleeve of his hoodie, barely breathing. Across the hall, Craig sat alone. He looked tired, older than Noah remembered. He hadn't spoken much since arriving. He hadn't looked at Noah either. Inside the courtroom, everything felt quieter, not because of silence, but because of pressure. Every voice, every sound seemed heavier. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes but a soft tone, called the session to order. Rachel and David spoke first, calmly, honestly. Rachel's voice wavered only once when she said, "We don't see Noah as a project, Your Honor. We see him as our son." Then came Craig. His words were hesitant, guarded. "I'm not saying I don't care about the kid," he muttered. "I'm saying I don't know how to be what he needs." The judge looked at him for a long moment, then turned to Noah. "Mr. Bennett," she said gently, "you're 15. That gives you a voice in this process. Do you want to say anything?" Noah hadn't planned to speak. He'd rehearsed things in his head for days, but now, under that gaze, he froze. Until Rachel squeezed his hand, just once, and he stood up. "I don't want to be somewhere out of pity," he began, his voice low. "I'm not asking to be rescued. I'm asking for a chance to grow in a place where I'm not just surviving." He looked at the judge, then briefly met Craig. "My mom used to say love isn't just what you feel, it's what you do every day. The Dawsons, they do it, every day." The room was quiet. Not courtroom silence, soul silence. The judge looked down, then wrote something quickly in her notes. "We will review all documentation and schedule a follow-up within 30 days, she said. "In the meantime, temporary guardianship is granted to Rachel and David Dawson, effective immediately." It wasn't the end, but it was a beginning, and on paper and in the heart. Outside, as they stepped into the crisp afternoon air, Rachel exhaled deeply and smiled at Noah. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded. "It's just weird that they have to decide if I belong." Rachel pulled him close. "They don't. You already do." That night, as the family sat around the dinner table, Caleb passed Noah the mashed potatoes without a word. But he did it with a grin. It was just another night. Noah had always been there, and maybe in all the ways that mattered, he had. The days following the court hearing passed in a strange rhythm, not quite calm, not quite tense. The Dawson household was full of routine, school drop-offs, dinners, homework. But beneath the surface, something lingered. Noah was adjusting. Grateful, yes, but also distant. He smiled at the right moments, laughed at Caleb's jokes, said "thank you" after meals. But inside, a storm was brewing, not because of the Dawsons, but because happiness for him had always come with an expiration date. Late one evening, Caleb found Noah sitting alone in the backyard. The porch light cast a soft halo around. Him and his breath made little clouds in the cold air. He was staring at the stars. He was waiting for them to tell him something. "You good?" Caleb asked, sitting beside him. Noah shrugged. "Yeah. You sure?" No response. Then, after a long pause, "Do you ever feel like if you let yourself be happy, it'll just disappear faster?" Caleb looked at him. "All the time." That surprised Noah. "I mean," Caleb continued, "you know my mom had cancer once, right? When I was 10. They caught it early, but for months I was scared every time she coughed. I'd wake up and check if she was breathing." He looked down, had his hands, "So yeah, I get it. Being happy feels dangerous when you've seen how fast things fall apart." Noah didn't say anything, but for the first time he felt less alone in that fear. Inside the house, Rachel sat on the couch with David. She was staring at the adoption packet, now partly filled out but still incomplete. "I can feel it," she whispered. "He's holding back. He's afraid to trust that this is real." David nodded. "He's not wrong to be afraid. He's lived through enough to question everything." Rachel looked up. "What if we do everything right, and he still can't believe we love him?" David reached over, squeezing her hand. "Then we love him louder." A few nights later, while cleaning out the closet in the guest room, the room that used to be Noah's, Rachel found something tucked behind a box of old board games, a notebook. The pages were filled with drawings, bits of poetry, scribbled phrases like, "Don't get too comfortable. People always leave. If they knew everything, they'd change their mind." Rachel sat on the edge of the bed, reading slowly, her chest tightening with each line. This wasn't rebellion. It was heartbreak. poured into ink. She didn't mention it to Noah, not yet. But something in her shifted. He needed more than space. He needed safety, emotional safety. That weekend, the Dawsons surprised Noah with a small gesture, a key, his own house key, on a simple silver ring. "We thought maybe it's time you had one," Rachel said with a warm smile. "Just so. This is your home too, no conditions." Noah stared at it like it was a treasure, not flashy, not expensive, but something he'd never had. A symbol that he belonged. He didn't say thank you, not out loud. But that night, he placed the key under his pillow, and for the first time in years he slept without waking up in the middle of the night. Some truths we say with words, others we say with presence, with consistency, with tiny objects like a house key that whisper, "You're safe now." It began with something small, a Saturday morning. The house smelled of pancakes and brewed coffee. Noah was sitting at the kitchen table, absent-mindedly cutting into his breakfast, when Rachel entered with a stack of clean laundry. "Noah, I found this hoodie in the wash, the blue one you always wear. It had a little tear in the sleeve, so I stitched it up." She placed it beside his plate, smiling, then turned to put away the basket. For a moment, Noah just stared at the hoodie. It was a simple gesture, a motherly one, something his own mother used to do, before cancer hollowed her out. He touched the stitched seam gently. No one had mended anything for him in years. His throat tightened unexpectedly. Later that afternoon, the Dawsons gathered in the living room to watch a movie, one of those nostalgic, light-hearted comedies that made everyone laugh without thinking. Too Hard. Caleb sprawled on the floor, Rachel curled up with a blanket, David holding a bowl of popcorn. Noah hesitated before joining them. But when he sat down, something felt different. Not like a guest anymore. Not like someone waiting for permission, just included. Halfway through the film, Rachel reached over and gently rested her hand on Noah's knee, instinctively, the way a mother might when she knows her child is holding something in. And for the first time, he didn't flinch. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Noah stayed up. He pulled out his notebook, and the one Rachel had found, though he didn't know she'd seen it, and flipped to a blank page. For the first time in months, he wrote something new. "I think I'm starting to believe them. Not all the way, but enough to hope." He closed the notebook gently, like it might break if he moved too fast. The next day at school, during English class, Mr. Hargrove asked the students to write a short essay. "What does home mean to you?" Most of the class groaned, but Noah froze. His hand hovered over the page for minutes. Then slowly he began to write, "Home isn't a place. It's when someone remembers how you like your tea. It's when someone notices you didn't eat and asks why, not to scold but to care. Home is when you're not scared to fall asleep. It's not perfect, it's not loud. Sometimes it's quiet, and that's okay. Home is where they don't give up on you, even when you give up on yourself." When he handed it in, he didn't expect a reaction, but 2 days later, Mr. Hargrove called him after class. "I just want you to know," the teacher said, "that was one of the most honest things I've ever read." Noah didn't know how to respond, but something in his chest swelled, pride maybe, or the unfamiliar sense that his voice mattered. That evening, while helping David fix a leaking faucet, Noah accidentally dropped a wrench into the cabinet below the sink. "Nice," David chuckled. "First time working with tools?" Noah smirked. "First time anyone trusted me not to break something." David looked at him, not laughing now. "Noah, we don't expect you to be perfect. We just expect you to be here." And for once, Noah didn't deflect. "I want to be." That night, Caleb found Noah in the hallway, sitting on the floor outside his bedroom. "You good?" Noah nodded, eyes glassy. "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" "About how weird it is to feel safe, and how I don't want to lose it." Caleb sat beside him. "You won't. Not here." Noah rested his head against the wall. I believe you." And just like that, a wall that had taken years to build began to crumble, not with a crash, but with quiet, steady grace. It was a rainy Thursday when the envelope arrived. Noah found it on the kitchen counter after school, cream-colored. No return address, his name written in shaky handwriting. At first he thought it was a school notice or some piece of bureaucracy related to the court case, but when he opened it, the paper inside wasn't printed. It was handwritten, and it was from his mother. Rachel watched from the hallway as Noah stood frozen at the counter reading. He didn't speak, didn't move, just read the letter over and over, until the ink nearly blurred beneath his tears. She didn't interrupt. Later that evening, Noah sat on the couch, the letter folded neatly in his lap. Caleb sat beside him, quiet, waiting. She wrote it before she died, Noah whispered. Gave it to our old neighbor, asked her to send it to me after I turned 15. Caleb glanced at him. Why 15? I guess she knew I'd need it more then. Noah unfolded the letter again, this time reading parts aloud, voice trembling but steady enough to share. Noah, my love, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer there to remind you who you are. So I'll do it here. You are not a burden. You are not broken. You are brave and good, and you deserve love without conditions. His voice cracked. Caleb placed a hand on his shoulder. Noah continued. I hope someone out there is holding your hand. I hope you're not alone. And if someone is trying to love you, let them. You have so much to give the world, Noah. Don't let my absence become a wall. Let it be a window. Noah folded the letter slowly, his hands shaking. She knew, somehow, she knew what I'd become without her. Rachel entered the room quietly and sat across from him. She also knew, she said softly, that someone would come along to remind you. Noah looked at her. His eyes were red, but focused. She wrote that I deserve love without conditions. Do you really think that's possible? That someone can love you without needing you to be easy? Rachel didn't hesitate. I don't just think it. I know it. That night, Noah placed the letter in the top drawer of his nightstand, not hidden but protected. It wasn't a goodbye anymore. It was a bridge between who he was, who he'd lost, and who he was becoming. And something else shifted inside. Him, not the fear. That was still there, quiet and lingering. But now there was something louder. Belief. The next morning, before leaving for school, Noah slipped a small note onto the kitchen table. Rachel found it while pouring coffee. It read, Thank you for not giving up on me. I'm still learning how to let people in. But I want to. Rachel pressed the note to her chest, her eyes welling up. Sometimes, what changes everything isn't a dramatic moment. It's a letter from the past arriving at exactly the right time, reminding you that love is not something to earn, but something to accept. The date had been set, March 22nd. That morning, the Dawson house was quieter than usual. No rushed breakfasts, no playful teasing between Caleb and Noah, just quiet movement, careful breathing. Like everyone knew the weight of what was coming. This wasn't just another court hearing, this was the hearing. The one that could make Noah, legally and officially, a Dawson. Noah wore a button-up shirt Rachel had ironed the night before, the E sleeves slightly too long. His shoes were polished, though scuffed from age. As he stood by the front door, holding the key she'd once given him, he took a breath so deep it felt like it came from somewhere buried beneath years of silence. In the car, no one spoke at first. Then David said, No matter what happens today, nothing changes how we feel about you. This isn't a test, it's just a step. Caleb turned around from the passenger seat and offered a quiet smile. A really important step. Noah nodded. He was scared. But for the first time, fear wasn't the loudest thing inside him. The courthouse, Marlene West greeted them with a reassuring nod. The judge reviewed everything. It's a strong case, she whispered to Rachel, but she'll still want to hear directly from Noah. Rachel nodded, her hand tightening in Noah's for just a second, enough to remind him he wasn't walking in alone. Inside the courtroom, Judge Harmon, the same one from the earlier hearing, looked over her glasses with the calm authority of someone who'd seen thousands of stories just like this. And yet, as she glanced at Noah, something softened in her expression. She spoke formally as protocol required, asking Marlene to summarize the request, the consent from Craig Bennett, the guardianship documents, the character references from teachers and neighbors. Then she turned to Noah. Noah, before I make my decision, I'd like to hear from you. One last time. Noah stood slowly. He didn't look at his notes. He didn't read from anything prepared. He just looked at the judge and then briefly at Rachel and David. "I used to think family was something you're born into," he began. "But I was wrong." He paused, gathering himself. "Family is the people who show up, the ones who see you when you're not at your best, who don't need you to be easy or perfect or anything except honest. Rachel and David. They showed up every single time." His voice cracked, but he didn't stop. "I don't want to be somewhere I'm tolerated. I want to be somewhere I'm chosen, and I've never been chosen like this before." He sat down quietly. Rachel wiped away a tear. David reached for her hand under the table. The judge looked around the room, then leaned forward. "I've seen many adoption petitions. Some come from necessity, some from convenience. But this one comes from love. Deep, intentional. Love." She turned to Noah. "Effective immediately, your legal guardians are Rachel and David Dawson. Your name will be updated per your request. Congratulations, Noah Dawson." Noah didn't cry at first. He just sat still, blinking slowly, as if his brain was trying to catch up with his heart. Then Rachel reached over and pulled him into the kind of hug that doesn't end, the kind you fall into. And that's when the tears came. Outside, under the wide sky of March, the four of them walked to the car, not just as a group, as a family. David ruffled Noah's hair. Caleb bumped shoulders with him playfully. And Rachel, she held his adoption certificate like it was made of gold. "Welcome." "Home, son," she whispered. Noah smiled through tears. "I think I've been home for a while, I just didn't know it yet." Weeks passed. Spring had fully arrived in Maplewood. The trees were blooming. Front yards filled with the quiet rhythm of sprinklers and kids on bikes. The Dawson's house, once just a place Noah stayed, now felt different. Not because anything had changed, physically, but because he had. There was a framed photo on the hallway wall now, one taken the day of the adoption. Rachel's eyes misty, David's arm around both boys, and Noah, genuinely smiling. It was the first time he'd seen a picture of himself that didn't look like he was trying to hide something. One evening, Caleb found a cardboard box in the garage marked Noah, old stuff. Inside were a few shirts, a book with his mother's handwriting on the inside cover, and a worn photo of her. He brought it to Noah's room and handed it over without a word. Noah looked at the photo for a long time. "You think she'd be okay with this?" he asked quietly. "With you having a new family?" Caleb shrugged. "I think she'd be proud you let people in." Noah nodded. "Yeah, I think she would too." Later that week, the school held an assembly for students with academic improvement. To Noah's surprise, his name was on the list, Noah Dawson. He stared at it in disbelief, not because of the recognition, because of the name. His name. Rachel, sitting in the back row with David, clapped so hard it made people glance over. She didn't care. Neither did he. Because in that moment, he wasn't a guest in anyone's life. He was Noah Dawson. And that meant something now. That night, as he got ready for bed, he opened his old notebook, the one filled with fears, doubts, drawings, and pain. On the last page, he wrote, "This isn't a fairy tale, no magic, no sudden healing, just people, just love, just days, one after the other, showing me I matter. I used to think love was something you had to earn. Now I know, real love finds you and it stays." He closed the notebook and placed it in the drawer with his mother's letter. 2 stories, one past, one future, both a part of him now, and somewhere. In the quiet of that house, long after the lights were out, a boy who once felt invisible finally fell asleep, not wondering if he belonged, but knowing he did.